sky above the Clover Kingdom had already forgotten what silence sounded like. For hours, the heavens had wept fire, and every mountain from the northern reaches to the southern coast trembled beneath the weight of a battle that should never have been fought by mortals. At the center of that ruin stood a boy no taller than the swords he carried, his white hair matted with ash, his breath ragged, his heart still refusing to surrender. Across from him, Lucius Sagrati smiled with the calm cruelty of a god who believed the ending had already been written. Asta lunged. The demon slayer flashed through the air, and Lucius answered with a spear of golden time that could unmake seconds themselves. When the two powers met, the world did not merely shake, it cracked. Reality itself split along an invisible seam, releasing a sound that was not sound, and a color that had never been named. From the wound in the air, a hand of darkness reached out, and Liebe screamed a warning that came far too late. The pull was gentle at first, almost tender, and then it was violent. Asta felt the earth abandon him. He saw Yuno reaching, saw Noel mouthing his name, saw the sun above the Clover Kingdom shrink into a distant coin of light. Then the coin vanished, and there was only falling, and the whisper of Liebe telling him to hold on. He woke to the smell of pine. Sunlight filtered through unfamiliar leaves, painting soft green stripes across his skin. The air was warm and strangely alive, humming with an energy he had never felt before. It was not mana. It moved differently, quieter, threaded through every branch, every insect, every distant footstep. He could not see it, yet he sensed it the way a blind man senses a crowd. Every living thing around him carried this invisible tide. And once again, as it had been since the day he was born, Asta carried none of it. Liebe stirred within the grimoire strapped to his back, uneasy. This world was wrong, the little devil murmured. Wrong in a way that felt ancient. Asta rose slowly, brushing dirt from his tattered cloak, and stepped between the enormous trees. A carved stone marker stood at the edge of a path, its symbols unfamiliar, its meaning lost. Somewhere beyond the forest, he heard the distant chime of a bell and the laughter of children he did not know. He did not walk far before the branches above him hissed. 4 figures dropped from the canopy in perfect silence, masks of porcelain hiding their faces, blades already drawn. They spoke in clipped, urgent voices, demanding his name, his village, his purpose. Asta raised his hands, tried to explain, but words felt like stones in a language none of them shared. The first attack came without warning. A shinobi wove signs faster than the eye could follow, and a great sphere of fire roared toward him, hungry and bright. Asta did not think. He drew the demon slayer in a single fluid motion, and the flames simply ended. They did not scatter. They did not die. They ceased to exist, as though the fire had never been born at all. Silence fell over the clearing. The shinobi stared, their disciplined breathing broken for the first time in years. Lightning came next, then a lance of jagged earth, then a whispering illusion meant to unravel his mind. Each technique met the black blade, and each one vanished, leaving only stunned warriors and a boy who did not understand why they looked so afraid. Far away, upon a tower carved with the faces of 5 leaders, a golden-haired man paused in the middle of a report. Naruto Uzumaki turned toward the horizon, feeling something impossible, a presence that seemed to swallow the very energy that defined his world. Deeper still, beneath roots older than kingdoms, a shadow named Black Zetsu opened its eyes. And in the quiet forest, Asta lowered his sword, breathing hard, and finally understood. He had fallen into a world built entirely around the one power he had never possessed. The gates of the hidden leaf rose before Asta like the ribs of some sleeping giant, tall and weathered, older than any castle he had ever seen. He walked between 2 silent escorts, his wrists unbound, his sword still at his back, and yet every villager who passed him lowered their voices to a whisper. Word had already spread. A boy had erased flame with a single stroke. A boy who was not a shinobi, yet moved like a storm given form. At the top of the Hokage Tower, Naruto Uzumaki waited without ceremony. He wore no armor and carried no weapon, only the quiet certainty of a man who had seen the world end more than once and had learned to greet strangers with open hands. When their eyes met, something passed between them that no interpreter could translate. Naruto saw a boy who had been laughed at by his village. Asta saw a man who had been called a monster before he had been called a hero. They spoke for a long time. Naruto listened without interrupting, and when Asta described the orphanage in Hage, the church that had raised him, the girl named Sister Lily and the friend named Yuno, the Hokage smiled with the ache of familiar memory. Two boys, born beneath different skies, had been mocked for the same crime. The crime of being empty in a world obsessed with power. By afternoon, Asta was standing in a training field ringed by curious observers. Kakashi. Hatake leaned against a wooden post, one lazy eye tracking every movement. Sakura Haruno stood with her arms crossed, medical instincts already cataloging every scar on the boy's arms. Shikamaru Nara chewed a blade of grass and murmured that this was going to be troublesome. And Sasuke Uchiha, arms folded, watched with the stillness of a hawk deciding whether to strike. Sakura went first, as a courtesy. Her chakra-enhanced fist cratered the earth where Asta had been standing a heartbeat earlier. He rolled away, laughing in astonishment, and complimented her strength with such honest cheer that even Sakura blinked. Shikamaru cast a shadow that raced across the ground, but the moment it touched the edge of the demon slayer's aura, it dissolved like ink in water. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. That, he murmured, should not be possible. Then it was Sasuke's turn. He moved without warning, faster than sound, his blade a whisper of blue lightning. Asta met him with the demon slayer, and steel screamed against steel. Sparks danced across the training ground. Sasuke wove genjutsu into the strike, subtle and cruel, meant to unmake the mind of anyone who dared cross swords with him. The genjutsu shattered before it could bloom. He tried again, layering illusion upon illusion, and each one collapsed the instant it brushed against Asta's presence. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. He pressed harder, faster, drawing on the perfected Sharingan that had once seen through gods. Asta could not match his speed, could not read his tactics, could not predict a single feint. Yet every time Sasuke's blade found an opening, Asta's raw physical strength turned the exchange into an earthquake. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sasuke lowered his sword and offered the smallest nod. It was not approval, it was recognition. Naruto laughed and clapped Asta on the shoulder, declaring that the hidden leaf would open its doors until the boy could find his way home. A room was prepared. A meal was served. Children gathered at his window to stare at the swordsman who could erase jutsu. For the first time since falling through the rift, Asta felt something close to belonging. But belonging in this world was a fragile thing. Somewhere far beyond the walls, in a chamber lit by pale artificial suns, a masked figure named Gigan received a report he had not expected. A new variable had entered the equation, an anomaly without chakra capable of nullifying divine technique. Kara did not tolerate variables. Its hunters were dispatched before the sun set, and the Shinobi world drew one breath closer to a war it did not yet understand. News of the anomaly traveled faster than any messenger hawk. It moved through the roots of trees older than empires, through the veins of the earth itself, through the invisible lattice of chakra that bound every living thing across the continents. And in a place that existed slightly beside the world, where sky and ground had traded their meanings, the surviving remnants of the Ōtsutsuki Clan lifted their heads and listened. They had ruled countless dimensions. They had planted the divine tree upon 1,000 worlds and harvested chakra from civilizations that had never suspected their existence. They had faced sages, tailed beasts, Jinchuriki, and reincarnations of forgotten gods. Nothing had ever frightened them. Nothing had ever needed to, until now. A single word passed among them, spoken in a language older than stars. Anti-magic. It was not a technique. It was not a rival power. It was an absence, a hunger, a void that consumed the one thing they had built their eternity upon. Chakra was their birthright, their currency, their religion. And somewhere on the small blue world below, a boy walked with a blade that unmade it. In the hidden leaf, Boruto Uzumaki jolted awake in the middle of the night, clutching his right eye. The Jugan burned, but not with its usual sight. Something inside him, the sleeping consciousness of Momoshiki, was afraid. The god who lived within him had felt Asta the moment the demon slayer had been drawn in the training field, and every time the black sword moved, Momoshiki flinched, as though a needle had touched an ancient wound. Boruto did not tell his father, not yet. He wandered the darkened streets instead, past the lantern-lit stalls and the sleeping dogs, until he found himself watching Asta from a rooftop. The visitor sat cross-legged on a balcony, sharing a bowl of instant ramen with Liebe. laughing at something the little devil had grumbled. He looked so ordinary, so absurdly ordinary. And yet Momoshiki's voice hissed inside Boruto's skull that this boy, this laughing peasant with mismatched swords, was the single greatest threat to their kind that had ever existed. Deeper still, in the buried chamber where Black Zetsu had once nurtured the plans of Kaguya, the ancient will stirred for the first time in years. It did not have a body anymore, only fragments, only echoes. But it understood what the Ōtsutsuki did not yet dare speak aloud. If anti-magic touched the chakra fruit, the fruit would rot. If anti-magic touched the god tree, the tree would wither. If anti-magic touched the cycle itself, the cycle would end, and with it every scheme spun across every age. Naruto and Sasuke felt the shift before dawn. They met on the roof of the Hokoge Tower, wrapped in cloaks against the cold, and spoke in the low voices of men who had learned long ago that some conversations were not meant for daylight. Sasuke had studied the boys' swords through the Rinnegan. He had glimpsed something beneath the black blade, a residue of energy that did not belong to their world at all. It resembled the aura of the demons sealed in forbidden dimensions, the ones that even Hagoromo had refused to name. Naruto listened, and for the first time in a long time he was afraid, not for himself. He had made peace with every death that might find him. He was afraid for the world he had spent his life protecting, because he now understood that the rules of that world were not the only rules. There were powers older than chakra, stranger than chakra, indifferent to chakra. And a boy who wielded such a power, however kind his heart, was a door that might not close once opened. Yet Naruto also felt something warmer beneath his fear, hope. Because if anti-magic could erase divine technique, then perhaps the shinobi world had finally been given the one weapon it needed against the gods that had haunted it for generations. Far above, in a fortress of glass and stolen suns, the Ōtsutsuki cast their decision. The boy could not be allowed to grow stronger. The boy could not be allowed to learn what he truly was. They opened a gate wider than any before, and their legions began to descend. The sky above the hidden leaf, for the second time in Naruto's life, prepared to burn. Dawn came the color of blood. The clouds above the hidden leaf split with a sound like tearing silk, and through the wound descended figures robed in white and gold, their skin pale as moonstone, their eyes shining with the arrogance of beings who had never been refused. They did not shout. They did not declare war. They simply arrived, and the earth began to weep for what was about to be taken from it. The first strike vaporized the eastern watchtower before the alarm bells could finish ringing. The second collapsed a district of homes into dust. Children ran. Mothers screamed. And then the shinobi answered. Naruto rose into the sky wrapped in the golden light of Kurama's chakra, older now, quieter, but no less fierce. Sasuke unfurled the black wings of the Susanoo above the rooftops. Kakashi drew a blade of lightning that had not seen battle in years. Shikamaru marshaled the defense with the icy calm of a general who had already calculated every acceptable loss. Boruto and Kawaki fought back to back, karma marks blazing, brothers by scar if not by blood. Every Kanoichi, every Jonin, every retired veteran who could still stand took to the streets. And in the middle of it all, a small figure with white hair moved like a comet given legs. The Ōtsutsuki laughed at first. They flung techniques that had shattered mountains, unleashed constructs of chakra shaped like beasts and blades and cages of pure will. Asta ran into them. The demon slayer sang. Constructs that should have been indestructible split down the middle and dissolved into nothing. A cage of celestial energy meant to trap Naruto simply ceased to exist when Asta passed his sword through its bars. An Ōtsutsuki noble, ancient and beautiful, stared in silent horror as the boy without chakra severed the technique that had preserved his life for 1,000 years. For a heartbeat, the tide seemed to turn. Then the invaders adapted. They stopped attacking Asta. They flooded around him instead, targeting the villagers he could not defend. A wave of pale fire consumed a hospital wing before Sakura could throw up a barrier. A district near the academy fell into a crater no one would ever fill. Asta turned in place, sword raised, and realized with a sick lurch in his chest that anti-magic could only cut what stood in front of it. Behind him, people were still dying. He tried. He ran until his legs burned. He sliced a beam of light meant for a fleeing child and caught the child in his free arm. He tackled Shikamaru out of the path of a spear that would have unmade him. He carried a wounded Sakura through smoke that scraped his lungs raw. But everywhere he saved one life. 3 more were lost in the corners he could not reach. Liebe screamed inside the grimoire, furious at the limits of a single body. Asta stumbled to his knees in the middle of a burning street, his hands blistered, his uniform soaked in blood that was not his own. For the first time since arriving in this world, he felt the old familiar poison of childhood rising in his throat. The whisper that had followed him his entire life. You are not enough. You were never enough. A shadow fell across him. Naruto knelt beside him amid the ruins, half his cloak burned away, one arm hanging useless at his side. He did not offer comfort. He offered the truth. Asta was not a god, he said. Asta could not be everywhere. No hero could. But heroes were not defined by the battles they fought alone. Heroes were defined by the courage they placed in others, so that when they fell, 1,000 more rose to take their place. Asta looked up. Through the smoke, he saw Shinobi still fighting, still refusing to break, still believing because he had refused to. Slowly, painfully, he stood. And deep within the grimoire, Liebe began to laugh, low and hungry, because the boy had finally remembered who he was. The transformation began quietly. Black feathers of shadow uncoiled from Asta's shoulders, and horns of living darkness curved upward from his brow. His right arm blackened first, then his left. Then the great wings of a demon spread across the ruined square, blotting out the pale light of the invaders. Liebe was no longer inside the grimoire. Liebe was inside him, woven into every muscle, every heartbeat, every breath. They had shared this shape before, but never like this. Never so completely. Never with so much at stake. The Ōtsutsuki hesitated. They had catalogued the boy's power. They had prepared counters for the swords, for the speed, for the reach. They had not prepared for this. The very air around him began to unravel, as though reality itself was allergic to his presence. Where his wings brushed, chakra decayed. Where his blade passed, dimensions frayed at the seams. Asta launched skyward. The battle that followed would be remembered in legends for 1,000 generations, though no scholar would ever agree on how many worlds it spanned. Asta moved between dimensions the way a swallow moves between branches. When an Ōtsutsuki fled into a pocket realm, he tore the realm open like wet paper and dragged them back. When another wove a technique the size of a mountain, he cut the technique in half before it finished forming. He fought like a storm that had learned mercy, striking to disarm, to shatter, to end without cruelty. Naruto and Sasuke found their rhythm beside him. It was a strange thing, 3 warriors from 2 different worlds fighting as though they had trained together since childhood. Naruto's clones flanked the enemy while Sasuke's Amaterasu funneled them into corridors of black flame, and Asta appeared at the end of every corridor to deliver the killing stroke. Chakra and anti-magic wove together into something neither shinobi nor sorcerer had ever seen. A dance of opposites, each one making the other terrifying. The invaders began to retreat. Actual retreat. Robed nobles who had never known the meaning of the word turned their pale faces skyward and fled toward the fractures they had descended from. Some were cut down before they reached the openings. Others escaped, carrying the impossible news back to their kin. There was a weapon on the small blue world. A weapon that could kill gods. Yet victory has always demanded a price, and Liebe was the one paying it. Asta felt it first as a chill in his chest, a coldness that no fire could reach. Then as a tremor in his sword arm. Then as a whisper, faint and apologetic, from the devil bound to his soul. Every dimension Liebe tore open drank a little more of him. Every technique anti-magic erased carved a little deeper into the well of shared power. Liebe was not immortal. He had never been immortal. He had simply been stubborn. Between battles in the eye of the storm, Asta hovered above the broken skyline of the hidden leaf and pressed a blackened hand to his own chest. He asked Liebe to stop. Liebe refused. He asked Liebe to retreat into the grimoire. Liebe refused again, and with the quiet dignity that only a devil raised by loneliness could possess, reminded him that they had promised each other something long ago. To fall together, or not at all. Asta wept without slowing. Tears traced clean lines through the ash on his cheeks. He did not stop fighting. He could not stop fighting. Somewhere below, Naruto rallied the survivors. Somewhere above, another wave of invaders gathered in the wounded sky. And somewhere between 2 worlds, a throne of white stone shifted, because the being who sat upon it had finally chosen to descend. The pale light in the clouds grew brighter, colder, older. The Ōtsutsuki King was coming, and he was bringing with him a hunger that had swallowed entire universes. Asta gripped the demon slayer, felt League's weakening pulse inside his own, and prepared for the last battle of his life. The sky did not open this time. It broke. A slow crack widened across the heavens like the shell of a hatching egg, and from within stepped a figure so vast that the mind refused at first to accept him. He was taller than the Hawkage Monument, robed in stars, crowned in a halo of concentric rings that spun in patient silence. His skin was the color of moonlight on old bone. His eyes contained galaxies that had already died. He did not speak. He looked down at the small blue world and considered it the way a farmer considers a field the day before harvest. The Ōtsutsuki King had come for his fruit. Every shinobi in the valley fell to one knee without meaning to. Chakra rebelled inside their bodies, straining toward him like iron toward a magnet, eager to be reclaimed by the being who had first seeded it into their bloodlines. Kakashi coughed blood. Sakura clutched her chest. Even Sasuke's Rinnegan flickered, its pattern struggling to hold against the gravity of a true god. Only Asta was untouched. He stood in the center of the ruined square, wings of shadow still spread, and looked up at the descending king with the same stubborn defiance he had once shown a bandit who dared to threaten Sister Lily. He was so small beneath that halo, so absurdly, laughably small. And yet, when the king's ancient gaze finally settled on him, the galaxies inside those eyes narrowed, because they had seen a great many things, and none of them had ever looked back the way this boy did. Naruto rose beside him, gold light burning brighter than it had in years. Kurama's voice rumbled through him, an old fox laughing one last time. "I will give you everything I have left," the beast said. "Make it count." Sasuke ignited both eyes to their absolute limit, blood streaking his cheeks, the Rinnegan spinning until it ached. Boruto stepped forward with Kawaki at his back, karma blazing, two brothers who had made peace only that morning. The battle began without a signal. It simply began because every warrior present understood that hesitation would be the last luxury of their lives. Naruto struck first, a fist of Kurama's chakra the size of a temple slamming into the king's chest. The king did not move. He merely raised one hand, and a wave of pale annihilation rippled outward, cracking the mountains behind the village. Sasuke Susanoo blocked half of it. Kakashi's remaining eye sealed the other half into a rift and closed it. Boruto and Kawaki flanked the king, karma blades biting into robes that had been woven from the birth of stars. The robes did not tear. The blades did not bite. Yet the boys held the king's attention long enough for Asta to move. He came in low, faster than he had ever moved, wings folded, both swords drawn. The demon dweller and the demon slayer sang in perfect harmony, and where they passed, the king's halo of rings shuddered. For the first time in millennia, an Ōtsutsuki bled. A single drop of silver fell from the king's shoulder, and when it touched the earth healed rather than burned, because even his blood was still divine. The king turned, and now he was angry. What followed could not be described in any single language. It was a hurricane of light and darkness, of chakra and anti-magic, of prayer and negation. Naruto and Sasuke poured out the last reserves of their lives to hold the king in place. Boruto pushed Momoshiki's screaming consciousness aside and became fully himself, perhaps for the first time. Kawaki became a shield. Kakashi became a knife. Sakura became a wall of green light that refused to fall. And Asta, wounded, bleeding, exhausted beyond mortal endurance, felt Liebe speak inside his soul for the last time. "Take it all," the devil whispered. "Every ember. Every heartbeat. Take me with you into the swing." Asta screamed a name. Then he screamed a promise. Then he swung. The demon slayer became a line of absolute nothing across the sky. It passed through the king's halo, through his robes of stars, through the galaxies in his eyes, and out the other side. The king stood very still. Then, slowly, quietly, the god came apart into motes of silver light that scattered on the wind and did not come back. The shinobi world exhaled. The silence after the god's death was the loudest sound anyone in the valley had ever heard. For a long moment, no one moved. Naruto knelt in the rubble, chest heaving, gold light fading from his skin. Sasuke leaned on his sword, blood drying at the corners of his eyes. Boruto and Kawaki sat back to back, breathing as though they had forgotten how. Kakashi allowed himself, at last, to sit down. Sakura wept without shame. The hidden leaf was broken, its rooftops shattered, its streets scarred, its people fewer than they had been at sunrise. Yet the hidden leaf still stood, and that, in a world that had almost ended, was everything. Asta lowered his swords. His demon wings dissolved into ash on the wind. He waited for Liebe's voice, for the little devil's grumbling complaint, for the familiar warmth in the grimoire at his back. Nothing answered. He pressed a hand to the leather cover and closed his eyes, and though his lips did not move, everyone nearby understood that a friend had been left behind on the field. Above the ruined square, the air shimmered. A crack opened in the sky, softer than the wounds the invaders had torn, edged in a familiar violet light. It was the rift he had fallen through, patient and unhurried, offering a road home. Asta stared at it for a long time. He thought of Yuno. He thought of Noel. He thought of a small church on a hill and a woman who baked bread that was almost inedible and beloved for it. Then he turned to the people around him. Naruto walked forward, slower than he had ever walked, and placed both hands on Asta's shoulders. He offered him a home, a hiyawami, a name among the shinobi, a headband if he wanted one, a life in the village he had bled to save. He said that Asta had already become one of them, chakra or not, and that the hidden leaf would be honored to keep him. Sasuke stepped up beside his oldest rival and offered the smallest bow, the kind reserved for equals. Boruto grinned through cracked lips and swore he would carry Asta's spirit into whatever came next. Kawaki simply nodded, and from him that was almost a poem. Asta smiled. It was the same smile he had smiled as a child in Hage, the one that made grown men soften without knowing why. He thanked them. He thanked them all. But his home, he said, was still waiting on the other side of that light, and there were people there who would tear reality itself apart to find him if he did not return. He asked Naruto for one last favor, not a favor of arms, a favor of memory. He spoke slowly, so the words would carry. Power, he said, is not what you are born with. Power is what you choose to protect. He asked that the children of this world be told that when they were old enough to understand, that a boy without chakra had stood beside their heroes, and that the reason he had been able to stand at all was because he had refused, every single day of his life, to sit down. Naruto's eyes filled, and he did not hide it. He promised. Asta walked toward the rift. At its edge he paused, turned once, and lifted the demon slayer in a silent salute. The shinobi returned it, every one of them, from the smallest Janine to the eldest veteran. Then the boy stepped through the light, and the light gently closed behind him. The valley was quiet again. Across countless realities, every world had believed that power belonged only to the gifted. Yet, on this day, in this place, a boy born with nothing had proven that destiny was not written by magic, or chakra, or the whispers of ancient gods. Destiny was written by the courage to stand when everyone else fell. Naruto lingered on the ruined rooftop until dusk. A soft wind moved through the broken tiles, and for the briefest instant, he thought he heard the whisper of a black blade cutting through the air, far away, in a world he would never see. He smiled and turned toward home,